Good afternoon. My name is Eric Martindale of 380 Mount Prospect. Standing with me is Joanne Sims of the People's Organization for Progress. That's one of the two major organizations in Newark, which is now supporting our rent control initiative. The other one is La Casa de Don Pedro. Two of our leaders from the New Jersey Tenants Organization met with Karen Brown last week, and there appears to be a philosophical opposition regarding working with community leaders, especially when it comes to writing new laws. And I find this particularly disturbing, and I want to report this to the City Council. She was not interested in any changes other than those that her staff was making, and then she would not share the changes that her staff was making. We don't need this type of wall between citizen leaders and our government. We want to work with Ms. Brown. Rent control in New Jersey is based on a 1973 case called Newark versus Fort Lee. The Fort Lee ordinance uses the CPI and talks specifically about looking 3 months and 15 months back. This CPI concept is not new. It goes all the way back to day one of rent control in New Jersey. There is also specific language to use on the issue of substantial compliance, and that's based on the City of Orange's ordinance that was challenged all the way to the appellate court with a strong tenant win. Once a court ruling is made on an ordinance, that ordinance language becomes golden. That language becomes the language to use if your goal is to make a solid rent control ordinance. We don't have the trust in Ms. Brown to do this. We don't, based on how she bungled the August 6th resolution, we don't have the trust that she can do this, and we feel that Matt Shapiro has to be reviewing the ordinance. I came down to the March 6th council meeting earlier this year, and I announced that tenants were running a new rent control ordinance for Newark. I assembled a team to make that happen. This team has players that are more knowledgeable than myself, and others that are more politically connected, or have other talents beyond what I have. But that's how I get things done. I put together a team. Matt Shapiro and Mitch Todd are the experts. Let our team write the new changes to the rent control ordinance. Even Roz Baraka wants us to review whatever Karen Brown is writing. So please, make that happen. One of the things that I do is write ordinances. I was one of the principal authors of the rent control ordinance earlier this year. In 2009, I rewrote Newark's security guard ordinance to require that the guards be in the lobbies. And then we were sold out 2 years later by the City Council when those key words in the lobby were taken out of the ordinance, and we weren't informed of the change. In 2005, I wrote zoning code for the City of Hackensack. I abolished the R1 zone, created 3 new zones that required larger lot size and lot frontage, and this was to protect the most architecturally distinct houses in the city. Going all the way back to 1989, when I was just a few years out of college, I wrote the ordinance establishing an environmental commission for the City of Hackensack. I asked the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions for copies of the 3 best ordinances in New Jersey. I took bits and pieces, and I wrote one for Hackensack. I handed the finished product to the newly elected City Council and the City Attorney, and 2 months later we had an ordinance for an environmental commission. See, one of the changes that is happening now in Newark is the have the law department standing in the way. Thank you.
Councilman James. Mr. Martindale, as an elected official, I have to express that your comments about the law department are very negative.
Yeah, they are.
I don't take it like, okay, first of all, the law department, they have a job also. Okay, just like you have your position as a tenant representative, they have a position to represent this council and this city in a way that is law abiding. Everything that you propose towards an ordinance may not be approved. Everything the landlords propose in ordinance may not be approved. So we have to be fair with it. We have to have something that actually is strong enough to survive a court challenge. Initially, when you came before the council, you berated the council for taking so long. We passed the ordinance. We had some issues with the description of capital improvement. We had some issues with the CPI application. We addressed those issues. At the same time, the Tenant Association proposed other changes, which did not come before the council. And the council only instructed Corporation Council to make those changes, which we had already discussed. New changes will have to be taken up in a new forum. They have nothing to do with the original discrepancies with the capital improvement description and the CPI application. So Corporation Council on her own cannot just start changing whatever she feels like or whatever you feel like, whatever the landlords feel like, without coming to the council and having an open forum and seeing which works for all, which will be legally binding. I congratulate you on your vigor, but there are three sides to every story. And so I respectfully ask that you watch how you comment about a Corporation Council who just got on board, who's trying to pick up where council has given her guidance as to clarifying those two major issues before. We will have a forum at a later date addressing all of the other changes you feel should be made with this ordinance, but before we go down the road of saying that the law department or Corporation Council is holding this up, let's relax, okay? She's doing the best, and she's doing within her guidance that she's been instructed by the council, keeping in mind that this has to be law-abiding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Frank Caribbean.
Madam President, members of the council, good afternoon. I'm Richard Riza, 389 Prospect Avenue here in Newark. As Mr. Martindale and I were walking into the building today, I commented to him that this is a very beautiful building. It's a bit of a monument to the democracy and the fact that this is where our elected officials govern the city. It's a place that should be respected, and respect begins with the truth. And over the last 7, 8 months that I have continued to come down here, I have found that sometimes the truth here is very elusive. I come here many of the times asking questions because things that we should know, we don't know. And we have had discussions about things, trying to figure out what is going on. And that, I think, that's my question today. What's really going on? I came here a month ago and I said the law that was passed in May. In June, the rent increases were 4%. In July, it was 4%. In August, it was 4%. And 4 days ago, it was 4%. Now, there was a directive from the mayor to the administrator who's in charge of implementing the law. It should have been 1.7%. So all these people could be tens of thousands at this point are paying double the rent increases that they should be paying. And if that is not dealt back to when the law was actually took place, the next round of increases is going to be on top of it. a law that was passed and that has not been implemented to date. Before coming down here, I stopped in the management office of my building. I met with Vanetta for a second. I said, what is the rent increase this town? She told me it was 4%. Mitch and Matt are going to speak later. They went up, they talked to Mayor Hernandez today. She was explaining how difficult it is going to be figuring out how to do this or that. But months ago, I met with her, and she knew how to do it. And she knew how to do this and was refusing to do it then. But she knew how. Today, it's, oh, well, we have to figure out how to do this. A month ago, there was a resolution. I had met with Councilman James, some of you had met with Matt and Mitch. You know, we were trying to resolve this question of the CPI. The resolution that came in here was handed out a few minutes before it was voted on. It was passed unanimously. I believe, as Councilman James looked at me and smiled, that you guys were trying to do something for us. You believed it, but you had handed it to someone who you trusted to get it right. And it wasn't right. And you were surprised when I got up here and said, what happened to the essential wording? This is an attorney. She sat in the meetings. She knew. She knew. It was not, is she incompetent? She knew what she was doing. This is the problem. I get up here and I say, I don't know what's going on. We're trying to figure this out. I sat here in this meeting as you all praised the mayor for transparency. I believe in transparency. We have been here for months, saying what we think, meeting with you, discussing it, saying it openly, trying to explain what we believe, what is right, why we think it's right. The night that the rent ordinance was put on the agenda, the landlords came here in big numbers with their attorneys. You all heard Calvin and Derek and all of them, and they all kept saying, well, we just wanted a seat at the table. We just wanted to have some of the discussion. Well, you know what? This is the table. And not one of them has been here since. I have been at every one of these meetings, and not one landlord, not one lawyer has been here to discuss their position and what they think. But they've been meeting with somebody, and their influence is being felt here. But where's the transparency? What's the discussion that's going on? Why don't we know? We're here, we're telling you. But their side is being told to somebody else, and it's being influenced in here. And there's something going on that for months the law is not being implemented, and now there's discussion that something is being written. Why don't we know about it? Who's responsible? Where's it going on? I think, if I may, 15 seconds, the mayor campaigned on this. Eric Martindale, 10 leaders went throughout the Newark ward supporting the Baraka team on this question, supporting this, and now, after months, to fail to do, the mayor has already put out a directive, but it is yet to be implemented. And let's see if in October it's still 4%. It's an issue. We're asking for your help.
Yes, sir. Councilwoman King.
The issue of first of all,
Someone close the door back there.
the issue of the rent control is not the only thing that Mayor Baraka campaigned on. But it certainly is not the only issue that those of us who all voted unanimously have let go by the wayside. We're not doing that. We have been instructing the law department to work with advocates. She took into consideration language. I believe it was you who provided how to break down the CPI. Okay? There may have been some pushback on one or two staff members who said they didn't understand or for whatever reason. But it has subsequently been dealt with. Okay? It has subsequently been dealt with because one of the issues that we raised in August was there are people who are calling our offices. So I can't let this not be out in the universe and all tenants here. We made a commitment to have the Corporation Council sit down along with the mayor because people started getting their rent increases in July. They started getting the notifications in August. So we said we wanted a resolution no later than September. Unfortunately, when that resolution did come, it wasn't implemented in the office that it should have been implemented in. But the truth is told here, and transparency is apparent. Unfortunately, in government, sometimes it takes a couple of times for the wheels to align. But no one here has deceived you or any tenant that has been told that we, the council, unanimously supported the rent control numbers being changed. And as far as the landlords meeting with people, the one thing I said when I was on that side and not on this side was that at some point in time, I said I supported the rent control ordinance being passed as it stood, because at some point in time, we do have to bring everybody to the table, okay? Because we don't want the landlords to turn around and walk away from their responsibility of doing capital improvements. We don't want the landlords to turn around and not turn around and give people a break because they've enjoyed those years in which they were able to collect 4% automatically and people's cost of living didn't rise. So now it's time for them to share the pain. So they don't get the 4% this time. And maybe for another couple of years they don't get that 4%. But that doesn't give them the permission to not do what they have to do for the residents. Okay? So the best I can say, this is like Obamacare, okay? We're still working on it. We're still tinkering with it, but we're trying to make it work. Because the intent was there. And the intent is still there. And so therefore, I see you shaking your head, sir, not you, but the gentleman in the back. You know, government, as long as the will is there, the political will, that's what the people need to be concerned about. If anybody didn't want to have this happen, they could have abstained, they could have voted no, they could have lied. Nobody felt the need to do that because it's the right thing to do for the residents right now. And so we're trying to make sure, but we did give Corporation Council the instructions. She couldn't just put anything that you all were telling her to put, because if that's the case, when the landlords sit down and meet with her, she gonna write what they tell her to put in there? We're the governing body. They have to bring it back to us. Any department head, any person that is in charge, they have to bring it back to us and get our consent as to what the intent is of what we're voting on. Because that's what's going to be challenged in court. And so when I sit in front of a judge and the judge turns around and asks Gail Cheneyfield Jenkins, what did you mean by your vote? I meant to make sure that the tenants got relief. And that 4% was no longer the automatic cap for the rent to go up. So we are working. So I know it's frustrating, but it's frustrating for us as well. And that's why we said, we're getting phone calls. That's why we asked Corporation Council to step in, to make sure that we would know come September 1st. So September 1st came, and what we did was we said we make sure it goes back retroactive to July. So, okay, I just want to put that out there because the characterization that is being formalized right now about the lack of transparency or the fact that, you know, you guys went out and campaigned for Mayor Baraka, or you campaigned for those folks who said they were had the desire to see this come to fruition, hasn't changed. But you know what? I don't know about Mayor Baraka, but Gail doesn't have a magic wand, nor does she understand how to swing it if she did. But I do know how to work for the best interest of the people. And if that means retroactively, that means retroactively. If that means that we're going to make sure that whoever is in charge of that department understands how to do it, and they're going to be held accountable, or they're going to be written up, or they're going to lose their job, or they're going to be reassigned, then I understand that. But
That's what I wanted to hear.
yeah, okay.
Thank you. That's what we wanted to hear. Because last month, this would have been resolved because it was a simple thing. And as far as I understand it, because again, I said the reason I came here because I don't understand what's going on. My understanding was it was resolved because the mayor issued a directive, which is yet to be implemented, but issued a directive that this was to be done and to be done retroactive. And I just came here to emphasize the point that we do need your help, that this thing continues, and it has continued, and it was the mayor's intervention, and we appreciate it, and we have appreciated the efforts that have been made. But the obstacle has been the administrator. And
it's complicated, but what I'm saying to you is, government is like making sausages, okay? You don't want to see what the process is, okay? But you want it to taste good after. And so what we're telling you is that no one here commitment has wavered. The mayor's commitment has not wavered.
we appreciate your efforts, but we're not going to go away. You know, you need us to be here too. You know, so we appreciate the work you're doing, but the issue goes on.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
For more people that are sitting in this room right now.
Thank you, Mr. Ariza. The Corporation Council has joined us. I'm going to ask if we can hear from the next three speakers. All are speaking to the issue of rent control. And then, Madam, if you choose, feel free to respond. Next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Hahn, Vice President, New Jersey Tenants Organization. I've spoken to you many times in the past. I hope it's going to be the last time tonight. I just want to review, for everybody, so, Tenant Coalition in Newark, in conjunction with us, came to you, it's probably last April at this point, saying, look, there are problems with the rent ordinance, there's problems with the rent increase, the percentage rent increase. Rents had doubled, in fact, tripled in Newark in a time period when they were going up twice the rate of inflation. And we showed you evidence of that, and you agreed with it. You agreed to adjust the ordinance and put the CPI formula in the ordinance. As other people stated, there was obstruction from the rent board administrator who claimed that it was not worded properly, it was not clarified, it was not clear that it was retroactive, it was not clear what time span the CPI went, and so forth and so on. So we went back and forth with you, with Corporation Council, the old regime at first, and the new regime more recently, looking for some language which would clarify your intention. We knew what your intention was. So we're looking for language that will clarify your intention for two reasons. One, so it will be clear to the director, the rent board administrator, of how she is supposed to execute this new law. And two, to strengthen the city's case against the lawsuit that the landlords filed. The more your ordinance is clarified, the more specific it is, the stronger your defense of that lawsuit is going to be. I mean, if you read the judge's remarks, it looks like it's a slam dunk anyway. It looks like you're going to win even if you don't make these changes. But we're interested in seeing that these changes are made in a concrete fashion. And so all of our efforts in terms of lobbying you and tenants calling you and us appearing before the council was to really clarify that change. As a result of this 3-month period of back and forth, 1/4 of the tenants in the city of Newark have essentially been given notice of an illegal rent increase. They've been given notice that the rent increase is 4%. Well, let me tell you, if they challenge this in court, which a lot of them probably will, if the landlords try to enforce that 4% increase, the amount of litigation that you're going to see in landlord-tenant court is going to be phenomenal. So it's really important that that gets settled. Hopefully, the mayor's directive will settle that. Matt Shapiro and myself met with Maria Hernandez before this meeting. She seems to get it, okay? But as of yesterday, people were calling up and they were still told that the rent ordinance was 4%. Hopefully tomorrow it will be a different story. The other suggestions that we made about the ordinance are just things that we think will clarify the ordinance, rectify some old mistakes, and just really strengthen it in general. And as a matter of fact, in terms of the substantial rehabilitation section, we actually think we made some concessions to the landlords, in that regard. So again, I think we want to get the CPI getting settled, and then we can start dealing with the other stuff, as soon as we possibly can. Thank you very much.
My name is Matt Shapiro. I'm president of the New Jersey Tenants Organization. I'd like to thank Council President Trump and members of the council for the opportunity to address you. Try not to be repetitive as much as I can. First, I'd like to thank you all for doing the right thing back in the day. I don't know if you were here, but I think all of the current members support the changes to the rent ordinance that were enacted, and they were extremely important to the tenants of Newark. The tenants were being hit with 4% increases each year that were very, very unfair. There's no guarantee that the buildings will be maintained. They got capital improvement increases for things that basically were just maintenance. You did something really good when you passed that law. And after that happened, landlords filed a lawsuit. Some people don't like to call it a lawsuit, legal action, whatever you want to call it. Instead of implementing the law, they have tried since then to charge illegal rent increases. And what they've done is essentially harass the tenants in Newark by saying, if you don't pay the 4% increase, we're going to take you to court and evict you. That's a pretty serious threat. And it's really upsetting to someone to have to face that. So we've been trying to work with you, your administration, anyone who's involved in this, to get this clarified. The single most important part that needs to be clarified is the CPI and how it's calculated. As Mitch just said, we just had a meeting with Maria Hernandez. We explained to her, and she understands. At least it seems she completely understands now exactly how to calculate this percentage increase in accordance with the directive that came from her boss. The next step is for her to implement it, and we'll see that, whether or not that happens, and we can avoid all these eviction actions and all the complaints to the rent leveling board that will ensue. she needs to communicate with the landlords and get them to voluntarily cooperate instead of doing what they're doing, which is breaking the law, by insisting on these 4% increases. Hopefully they will cooperate. And another part of this does relate to the law department, because right now we have a policy that says calculate this correctly, but the law still has the same old language in it that was imprecise. Let's just say it that way. It wasn't written terribly well. And we need to be sure that that language, when it's changed, is changed correctly. And that it's absolutely clear that this change is just a clarification, not really a change. It's a clarification to make certain that we know that what the intent of the council was back on May 20th when all voted to pass this. In order to do that, we need to be able to see language, and that's the problem with the law department. I'm not saying they're not trying to do their jobs, but they're not sharing the information. We need to see the language because, truthfully, we do have the expertise. And the law department does not have a lot of experience with rent control. And that's not a criticism, it's just the way it is. And we can help them, but we can't help them if we don't see the language. They really need to share it with us. We understand that the other changes that we proposed, the ones that are not dealing with lawsuits, have to wait. We do understand that, as Councilwoman Trainfield explained. And we're happy to do that. But the ones that do deal with the lawsuit, if we get the opportunity to see the language, we can be very helpful. And we can avoid mistakes like some of the mistakes that were made in the past. Thank you.
Madam Clerk,
I'm sorry, Madam Corporation Counsel, you can come up, listen, I just have to give some clarity, okay? Because, we instructed you to do something, okay? And Mr. Shapiro, the language that you want to have considered and the language that you want to have put into the ordinance, you don't need to see what she has already written in order to submit that to her. Okay? You can give what you want in writing and give that to the Madam Corporation Counsel. Because let me just say to you what I just heard. And please correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying to the Corporation Counsel, because everybody's not an expert on every different part of the law. We understand it. Okay, that's why it's very hard for the tenants to get an attorney to represent them when they got to go against the landlord. But what you're saying is you want to write the legislation, but you want to sit with her while she's doing it. Why can't you write the legislation, write the wording, and give it to her? Because if we allow you to do that for the interest of the tenants, then we have to do that for other people. Which, what I mean by that means the landlords, when they want to put something in, now we have to give them access to it. Because we're about equality and transparency. So that means when a towing company comes in here and want to write something about changing the law about towing, that means they get to tell the Corporation Counsel how to fashion it. Now, we don't have a problem with you submitting the language. And before it goes through, the Corporation Counsel sitting back to the council saying, this is what they wrote, do you all agree? And then we come back to you and say, Mr. Shapiro, is this what you guys are talking about? And if you say no, but I personally do not want to set precedent. I'm speaking for Gail now, do not want to set precedent by saying to someone, you get to write the legislation, the way you want it written, and then you don't take advantage of it by presenting it to her. Because you have that opportunity right now, today, at this moment. Write it, give it to the Corporation Council, and then from there, we go on.
Mr. Shapiro, I need to ask you to please have a seat. You have stated your case. We are getting ready to give Corporation Council the opportunity to respond. We are not going to solve this problem in this meeting. And so we heard from the tenants, we heard from council. I'm going to recommend that the last statement come from Councilman James, and then we will hear from Corporation Council.
I just want to say that we're not asking for decision-making authority. We're not asking for that. I gave you that impression. I'm sorry.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's all we want to do.
Thank you.
And Matt, that's all I was going to add. The initial language came from the Tenants Association. That initial language we all felt was improper and said we needed clarification. So to now bring it on Corporation Council, it initially came from the Tenants Association. Okay?
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
I just want to say that we all stood here during an election cycle where people were on different sides as it related to the mayoral campaign, and we agreed in principle on the definition of capital improvement and also on the tying in the rent increases to the CPI. So for you to come before the council and make it seem like we're against the things that you propose, I think it's kind of ridiculous. And then the other thing that kind of bothers me is almost to make the inference that this is like a quid pro quo, because you campaign for a certain group of individuals. You now expect the council to be here demanding that the Corporation Council do A, B, and C. We supported this back in May. Corporation Council is working diligently on her end to ensure that any of the updates that were requested via resolution by the council are incorporated. And when she's ready to release that document to us, it'll be available to you as well. So there's no one's hiding anything here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Good afternoon, Karen Brown, Corporation Council. I didn't have the opportunity to hear all of the comments with regard to rent control. I was in the meeting and I caught the latter comments with regard to the ordinance. So I don't know exactly all of the comments that were made about me in my office, and don't know how I got caught in the crossfire, but if I have to bear that cross, I will. I think I heard Councilman James' comments and Councilwoman Jenkins' comments, and I think that they hit the nail on the head and have addressed many of the concerns. But one thing I did want to address with regard to Matt Shapiro's comments is I don't think that they were completely accurate. With regard to the CPI, which was the most pressing issue, which was the issue needed to clarify the most, council passed a resolution that we believe clarified the council's intent. In terms of language, I don't know if Mr. Shapiro recalls it. I met with him last week. We discussed the CPI language and actually the policy and procedures that were developed for Ms. Hernandez to apply the CPI was based on the amended language to be proposed in the ordinance, and it was based on Mr. Shapiro's clarification of the CPI. So the language that has been included, Mr. Shapiro actually suggested that language and he incorporated it, and the new policy is based on that. And Mr. Shapiro gave us a chart of the CPI with the specific numbers already calculated that we attached, that we actually asked the Department of Economic Development to to the policy so that Ms. Hernandez would not even have to do the calculations. So again, we try to be as accommodating as possible, but yet stay within our authority with regard to what our charge was and what changes we were actually authorized to make to clarify some things that were in the lawsuit. Again, there are additional changes that the tenants want to make. There are additional changes that the landlord wants to make. And I do not believe it is the law department's authority to decide which changes to adopt without first presenting the amended ordinance with the terms that we were charged with clarifying to the council, and that it go through the amendment process through the council. So we're not holding up anything. We met with the tenant representative, Mr. Shapiro. We met with the landlords to deal with the stuff that was an issue with the lawsuit that we were charged to do. The amendments will be put in Legistar, and they can be on the council agenda for discussion, vote, amendment,